We are here because we are dedicated to helping the entire CrossFit community. Determined to elevate coaches, box owners, athletes, and everything in between, we believe that this mission will begin right here, right now. While this time and this goal begins with you, our hope is that you take this fire ignited within you and weave it into your own life with the same unrelenting passion to give those you have the privilege of coming in contact with the best hour of their day.
Big day on the show today, Fern. You know, we started recording these just over 2 years ago, actually. We were having some issues with Apple. I was digging in. Young Katie was digging in. I think it was just because of the update.
Well, let's define digging in. By digging in, you were texting me and saying, I don't see it. That was the extent of your digging in. And then Katie actually dug in and was just like, I'll contact Apple. So when you say digging in, I feel like that it's fair that we should define your version of digging in, which is complain to me. That no, you can't see a show on Apple.
Hard reboot of my phone.
Yeah.
Reboot, text Fern. No, I think it was because they did an update. I mean, let's be honest. Katie's great. I don't think she called Steve Jobs. I don't think Steve Jobs is alive anymore, so I don't know who you would call.
However, if you did call Steve Jobs, everybody wants to know how that conversation went.
He was my only contact at Apple, and now I don't have anyone. But if you listen on the Apple podcast, hopefully it's back up and running for you. All of a sudden, there's like 7 new episodes. But what it also did, it showed me, it has this new thing where it says how long you've been subscribed to a specific show.
Meaning we can see that for our listeners, or like you can see for the podcast you subscribed to?
Yeah. So I subscribed to like 2 podcasts, this being one of them. And then it showed that I've been subscribed since April of 2019, which is probably, that's exactly when we launched. So.
Is it? I thought we launched in March.
We maybe I didn't subscribe right away. Maybe
probably not.
Few episodes.
Yeah. You were probably not fully committed at that point. You're like, I don't know if this is going to work out.
So anyway, it's been 2 years, and we had a great episode last week, as it is, and people really were intrigued by what we were saying. Hard work, and you can take that and really extrapolate it to any business, any entrepreneurial venture. And that it's been 2 years, and today is our first day with somebody on the show with us.
Well. Not just somebody, right?
Yeah, not a guest.
Katie, as we will now refer to her as, we tried to get young Jess. She turned me down. Not the first time that she's turned me down in 20 years, but
with that Navy salary.
Yeah, but Katie, who is what I will describe as the glue, or largely the person that is the buffer between me punching you in the face.
not the 3,000 miles, Katie.
Yeah. Not the 3,000 miles, Katie. So Katie's been working with us officially since she got back. By the way, we should all congratulate Katie on her very new marriage. She is a newlywed. Just recently got married.
Thanks. So, you guys are really talking me up.
Yeah. So
people that we work with have talked to Katie because we came up with did you like that title I came up with, Katie?
Yeah, Director of Operations. Seemed very powerful.
Director of Operations, and that's really what it is. A lot of people have spoken to her that now work with us. She's one of the people that you would find out if you're a good fit for Affiliate U. But we also wanted to have her on the podcast to A, keep us in line, B, look things up if we need, and C, I think we realize we need a female voice as well, right? 2 dudes talking all the time. It's nice to hear.
I mean, you're pretty feminine.
I am, but Katie's got me beat on that just by a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Katie, did you and I meet first, or because I did your podcast, correct? Mm-hmm. And then had you contacted or communicated with Jay prior to that?
Yeah, so I actually interviewed Jay first on my podcast, and then you.
And you're like, I need an upgrade.
Level 4. I'm the only level 4 she ever had on her podcast.
The only one. It's true. It's true. The only one. And I listened, I'm an avid listener of the podcast, of course, but on episode 300, which you guys put out, if you remember, and I talk about a lot of stuff, but on that podcast, you talked about things that you were struggling with social media and just things you wanted to do. So I sent you guys an email saying I wanted to help, and you took a chance on me, I guess 6 months ago now. And then last week, came full time. So yeah.
Oh, something else that's interesting, we put out 100 episodes in 6 months, because that was 6 months ago. And we just put out episode 400, a few weeks ago with Dave Castro.
I think you maybe it might have been like some lag time.
I mean, based on 2 years, that's about right. I mean, like if we're going to do 400 in 2 years, that's about 100 every 6 months.
Wow, that's impressive. I got to give us credit. But yeah, I think it's.
Who says that?
I say that, going back to what I was trying to get at. The mentality that we were talking about on the last episode has nothing to do with affiliate ownership. It has to do with ownership of your life. It has to do with entrepreneurship. And you can look at it from the side that, Fern and I started recording 2 years ago, and we just kept doing it. Just like we talked about being an affiliate owner, you have to do it, even when it's not fun or glamorous or there's $0 coming in. But also from Katie's perspective, something I always tell people is you can be an entrepreneur without owning a business. Being an entrepreneur to me just simply says, I'm in charge. I'm in charge of me. And that might mean I'm willing to work for these two crazy people and take a risk. It might mean, for example, we have a nanny now, and I would consider her an entrepreneur. She works for us technically, but if you're willing to set your schedule, you're willing to take the risk, you're willing to bounce around, you're continuously trying to improve she's always studying something like, well, I'm not referring to Katie, I'm referring to the nanny to be, she's always reading about, doula stuff and lactation stuff. Point is, you need to be bettering yourself, which is something we discussed.
Do you want me to chime in, or you want Katie to?
Yeah, I mean, this is typically where somebody responds to me. I'm used to
being ignored.
Yeah, being ignored these days.
Yeah. I think so, with regard to Katie specifically, this is a kind of a good example of where I think most gym owners, and it's weird. I have recurring conversations like in blocks, right? Because it's like I guess a lot of people go through the same thing at the same time, and one of them is where should I be investing time or money in my business? And I think one of the fatal flaws that really prevents a lot of affiliate owners from kind of making a leap over any one particular hurdle, but this one specifically, is investing in the wrong thing. Meaning, either most people will gravitate towards like, we need more equipment or we need a bigger space, totally bypassing the very real fact that in order to get to the next level, you actually need people. Right. And that's where I made mistakes many, many times. And then, so now, what I think most people should be looking towards is your first investment as affiliate owner should be a coach, should be like, find somebody who is great at their job. I was just meeting with a coach here who is going to go back to Hawaii and work, and he's going to go back and work at one of the gyms that we're working with in Affiliate U. And that's going to be a big breakthrough for them. And as well as another gym they're working with in North Carolina, they were, a two-man show, and it's not work more, work harder. Yes, you have to do those things. It's not buy equipment. It's not expand your space. It's like build a team. The team will provide all the growth that you're ever going to want, which is why we didn't invest like with Best Hour. We didn't invest in all sorts of other tech and other things. We're like, we need somebody who's good, who can like help us move a little bit faster. And Katie's been great. She's far more organized than either one of us, like by large margins, particularly you, Jay.
Hopefully if people are listening to this, they got our first newsletter that went out last Friday, because this will be out on Monday. Mm-hmm. So hopefully you got that. Katie is
If not, Katie's fired, so it's been fun. Just kidding.
But Katie's responsible for that. And, if you haven't already got it, definitely go to our website, besthouroftheirday.com. You should be able to join and get a newsletter every Friday that has some great advice, information, questions, etc. So go check that out. Fern, I do want to make an announcement.
Okay. You have finally realized that level 4 doesn't mean anything?
October 8th and 9th of 2021. What are you doing?
October 8th and 9th. Are we going on vacation, bro?
Dave Matthews Band is going to be here in Denver, Colorado, October 8th and 9th. I suggest you put those kids in a cage or whatever you do with those two when you leave the house. Grab Jess and fly out here, and let's go see.
You buy those plane tickets and I'll be there.
Put Logan and Chappie in the basement and let's do this.
Don't forget, you owe me. You owe me.
All right. You're coming out here. We're going to see Dave. So based on this past week's conversation, we got a lot of great feedback. Also, Katie, we got a lot of feedback on that original picture.
Yeah, that was a funny picture. I laughed for a solid 30 seconds when I saw it.
So that hurts, Katie. Was that the first seminar we ever worked together, Jay? I think it is.
I was thinking about it. I don't think it is. I believe,
really?
Yeah, I think we had worked together. That was clearly at Reebok 1.
Yeah. So who was the flow?
Well,
Denise?
The original picture also had Joey Dill and Cameron Soden.
Right. Yes, Joey Dill was there. Cam Soden was there.
And then there must have been a woman. I'm guessing. Was Katie
was
there?
I'm pretty sure. I think she sent us the picture, but I think she sent us the picture because she was there.
She might have. Oh yeah, because back in the day, we used to have like 5 or 6 trainers per seminar.
Well, at Reebok, it was very much like when they used to do a lot of the ones at Rogue, which is they would very regularly hit 50 to 55 people.
Yeah, depends on space. I'm assuming the flow is Denise, but here's what I remember.
I'm almost positive it was Denise or James because oddly enough, I've never worked with Austin. Of all the time I've spent knowing Austin, I've never worked a seminar with him.
Well, you're lucky because he's not that fun. But if you remember this, Fern, I'm going to bring us way back. You and I, here's where I think we met. Ready? Are you ready? Because you're going to remember it as soon as I tell you. Okay? Are you ready?
Yes.
King of Prussia, you and Denise Thomas picking me up at Terminal F of the Philadelphia airport.
There is no Terminal F.
Exactly. So, but that was the first time we met. We had all flown in to Philadelphia. We were working a seminar at King of Prussia. And
also, do you know that we were the spark of Denise's marriage?
Well, I'm going to get there. So for those of you that don't know Denise, we're talking about Denise Thomas, a longtime flow master. I believe she now works with CompTrain.
She does, correct.
Something to do with CompTrain now. But great human being. She's been in our coaches development group. She's been on the podcast. So I landed in Terminal F, and you guys had landed in a different terminal, obviously. And we spent like 2 hours of you guys trying to find me.
It was far too long. I specifically remember because anybody who's been to Philadelphia knows that if you're trying to pick up an arrival at Terminal F, it is less than obvious where said terminal is. It's like it's like one off ramp that is like not ideally placed in that whole thing, and that's a fairly large airport. So we actually tried to make it through, and then we left the airport and had to like drive over the bridge and turn around and come back because I was like, we had gone too far. I was like, we literally can't turn around now. We have to keep going
to the rental car area. Like Terminal F, you cannot access any other terminals.
Right.
So I basically had to like meet you in some like obscure Hertz rent-a-car. It was like, that was the only way we can find. So anyway, it was
a nightmare.
We finally meet up, and
so this is actually very relevant and actually very accurate. So all of this build up to then be let down, which is very much what it's like dealing with you, Jay, which is just like a lot of build up and then just very anticlimactic.
You're getting excited, like I'm gonna.
Yeah. I'm like, we're gonna go pick up this guy. He's great, and I'm just like, the little kid standing over here on the side of the corner with his tote bag? Like,
But
is
you
that
don't
who we're picking
remember-
up?
I don't necessarily remember like, okay, I met Fern like that moment. Because the truth is, we may have met in passing prior to that.
We actually, for sure, I don't know if we've technically met, but I do remember being at either a workshop or a competition or something or other. And I'm gonna let you in on this. I no longer feel this way about you, Jay, but I do actually specifically remember. I can come back to this. I was like, "Who's that douche with the long hair?"
Really?
Yeah, I was just like, "Who's a little short guy with the long hair?" Like,
Well,
what's
you
going on
just,
over there?
wait. You just said douche and then you said short guy. They are two different things. You can
Well,
be a short guy and not a douche.
Yeah, but you encompass both of those.
I was both. Okay.
Yeah, you're both.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. I think back then I was. I think I agree with you. It's
Because
probably
you did have a very air of I'm big man
I'm
back
long
in the
for it.
day.
I'm
As
long for.
right, but you had a little bit of a swag, and I was like, look at this little short guy, thinks he's tough.
That's before I've talked about it. It was before I realized I was short.
Yeah, and
So I
now,
had a
now it's okay.
different air about me.
So no, I was aware of,
Well,
and
yeah.
to be very candid, I had no idea who you were, and I didn't even know where that was, but I know I was familiar with you. Like I'm very good with faces, so I don't like I may not remember names, but I'm very very good with faces. I remember faces.
You were probably amidst competition for 2012 regionals.
I was literally gonna say you were probably on the equipment team while I was competing, being a real athlete. That's
so
probably what happened. And I was like, hey, pick my bar up, like
You were
move that out of the way.
You were so focused that you looked over and you just assumed I was
I was like, hey, I might not win this competition, but at least I'm not that guy.
So, but let's go back because there is a funny story about Philadelphia. So Denise and you pick me up. We head to the hotel, which it was a Hilton because they have the cookies.
The DoubleTree.
DoubleTree. Okay, DoubleTree. The cookies. Great hotel every time. And it's like in this kind of area that, 5 minutes away, we've got this huge mall, like a Cheesecake Factory, a Whole Foods, etc. So Denise picks us up and she's being weird.
No, I was driving because she's giving me shit the whole time about not being able to find.
But okay.
And I'm fairly new, so like I'm not sure if she's being serious at this point. I'm just like, she was like, how Denise can be kind of serious. Yeah. She's like, you're not very good at this, and I was like, fuck.
She has a very sarcastic, fun sense of humor, and I've known her for a long time. So I interned on her very first gig that she was hired in Brooklyn. And so you guys pick me up, and she takes us to the hotel, and she's like, guys, you need the car quickly because I'm going to use it for the night. Remember? So she goes, do you need the car?
Oh, yeah.
And then we go inside and, typically like this is how a seminar works. We all get there, you check in, typically you put everything down if you haven't already done some grocery shopping, and then you head out to like a Whole Foods and maybe grab some dinner on the Friday night before a seminar, like nothing crazy.
Right.
So Denise, I need the car. So we go inside and there's like two women sitting at the bar. There's Ashley, who will eventually become Denise's wife.
Right.
And then
I know I want to come back to that because there's another funny part that I didn't connect until later, but keep going.
So then there's Vika.
Yep.
And I'm to this day friends with both of them. And obviously Ashley, is part of my life. She's Denise's wife. Like I was at their wedding. So, but she brings
They're both phenomenal people.
Yeah, and Ashley's like incredibly smart. I believe she's in the
Ashley's getting ready to do the 5K or the Frogman swim in Boston, I think. Like
they're training for something. If you check
like next month, I think they're both. All three of them. I think Ashley, Denise, and Willie are doing it.
Yeah. Willie being Sarah Wilkinson.
Sarah Wilkinson, yeah.
So Denise, and Katie, I know you're still listening. You're the only one, by the way, still listening. So
I'm here. Yeah.
Denise literally introduces us and says, hey, something to the extent of this is Fern and Ackerman. They're leaving. And that was kind of like Fern and I think that's kind of what we bonded. Like, what's happening?
I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
She was so nervous, dude.
So, we can flash forward and say we didn't, and the whole weekend was like this, but we didn't realize like this was about to be their first date.
Yeah, that was our first date.
and there's a huge backstory. I'll let Denise share that at some point, but she was incredibly nervous, which, partly probably why she was acting that way in the car.
That was literally what she said. She's like, this is Fern, this is Jay, they're leaving. And I was just what the fuck?
Anytime we've worked together or been in the same room, the three of us since then, and this has got to be 2013.
Probably.
We both knew.
Yeah, so this is like almost 8 years ago.
Yeah. So every time we've seen each other since then, we've brought it up. And, and it wasn't for quite some time after that we understood the drama and exactly what was going on. It was
yeah, she didn't tell us for like years later.
Or even like that night, Saturday nights, typically the trainer dinner. We were King of Prussia. I can assume we were with like Rob Miller and Amy Lyons. And I don't remember.
Yeah.
Who,
well, for sure, Amy. I don't know about Rob, but yeah, for sure, Amy.
I remember Saturday night, Denise gave me the credit card and she was like, I'm not coming to dinner. Here's the card. And they went, but anyway, so you and I went to Whole Foods. I don't really have a strong recollection of it, but I knew we went, like we drove.
We did not go to Whole Foods. We went to Wegmans.
Oh, yeah, you're right. We went to a Wegmans. I love Wegmans.
We have a Wegmans here.
Wegmans, you get live music on Friday nights. Like there's a dude that plays acoustic guitar.
Yeah,
not like a grocery store.
Yeah.
So that to me is my first recollection of meeting you.
I mean, I think it's probably our first extensive interaction. One of the funny things about that is just like when we were in the car, obviously you and Denise had met and spent a little time together prior to that. And if anybody hasn't figured out over these 400 episodes, Jay is the king of inappropriateness. And so like you were making, like you and Denise were like banding back and forth. And like, I did not know Denise was gay. Right. So I'm just like, wow. I was like, this is kind of making me uncomfortable a little bit, right? And you were like saying something about like, like, no, I'm gonna take you out on a date, Denise, or something like that. I'm like, what the fuck? So then
I don't remember.
You said, yeah, but it was like, it was like, but it was going both directions, right? And I don't remember who initiated it, but I was just like, what in God's name is happening right now? And then later on, I was like, she's definitely, not into dudes, but definitely for sure not into this dude. Like,
yeah, I mean, I know the first time I met Denise at that internship, I did not know she was gay. Obviously, none of that matters, but I didn't know. But at some point, you realize that Chuck Carswell always says that about me. Chuck always says, Jay can get away with saying the most inappropriate things. And I think
well, the only reason it like came into my mind is because of the interaction I was witnessing. I was like, I was like, this is weird. I was like, what is going on? And then it all came full circle. And I was like, now everything makes sense. I'm connecting all the dots at this point. I'm like, I'm an idiot.
Well, we got some pushback on a recent episode, right, Katie, with Zach Helander.
Yeah.
And I think, Chuck always says I can get away with saying things. And then Joe Alexander, another amazing human being, one time said I've got the golden tongue, which I don't think he meant inappropriately. I think he meant, just so that you can talk to people. And I think a lot of that just comes from intent.
Right. I even Kevin Ogar says this. He's like, you can say anything to anybody. It just depends on how you say it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we had them on recently with the adaptive community.
Right.
And
I've talked to him about that extensively because, Kevin is definitely one of those people who make you feel weird about, making jokes about paralyzed people and stuff like that. And he'll do it. And the first couple of times I spent with Kevin, I wasn't sure if I was allowed to laugh at some of the jokes that he was making. I was like, this is funny, but internally I'm just going to put that deep down inside because I don't know if it's right for me to laugh at that. And then I talked to him. I was like, bro, I was like, can I joke with you? And he was like, bro, we're friends. And I was like, oh, all right. Well, next time you say that, stand up and talk to me and say that,
No, I think it's important. I think, obviously in that scenario with Denise, I was probably being somewhat inappropriate, but you have to know your audience and know. So I, remember that. And then, going back to that boy band picture, I don't remember what we did, but we were like, let's take a boy band picture.
It was for sure probably either Cam or Joey Dill's idea.
I could see that. Joey Dill,
for sure,
longtime seminar staff member. He's in New Jersey. Cam's, I think he's a police officer now.
I believe that is correct. No, police officer.
Police officer.
NorCal somewhere.
Yeah, in California.
Yeah.
Speaking of gay, Fern, do you think, Katie, you can't laugh. I'm about to ask a serious question.
I'm sorry. I'll keep it together.
Do you think I would have had more or less success in the dating world if I was gay? Is that inappropriate to ask, Katie? You shook your head.
It's fine.
Wait.
Like Fern said, it's the way you say it. It's fine.
I'm happily married to a woman.
I think you'd be subpar in both communities.
Definitely subpar in the female. I was just thinking about it. Like if I were gay, if I would have had an easier time. I think I'm too small to be gay. I think.
What does that even mean? Is that there's like a cutoff? Like you got to be so tall?
I think I would have had a hard time being a nice guy.
I don't even know what that means, dude. That's but you know what? I'm willing to go with that. I'm willing to go with that. We will assume that is the case.
I've almost exclusively dated women that are smaller than me.
Which is impressive, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, Roz is, smaller, equal in height, etc. Or if they were a tiny bit taller, like smaller frame, so they didn't look much bigger than me. But I think if you're dating men, I'm small for a man, so it's going to be hard for me to find a man smaller than me to date.
Bagel boss.
That's if that's my option.
And he's angry, so I mean, yeah, you're probably right. You're probably,
I want to date a bigger guy. I think I would want to date a smaller guy.
Yeah, that'd be hard to find.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll stick with my wife, I guess. I love this story.
Good plan. Good plan. I think it'll serve you well. Yeah, but to pull us out of this really atrocious rabbit hole that we're in, going back to where we were talking about earlier with regard to how affiliate owners could bring help on. And I think we all look at the shiny things and think they will add value. It's just like, hey, if I get some more bikes, that'll help. It might, probably not. I mean, it might help. It help a very specific problem, which is this class is typically more people than I have bikes, right? But that's not actually the overarching problem, right? And which is something that to be considered. When I could look at something like maybe add more classes and spread those people out.
Yeah, I think anytime you're about to spend more money in life, actually one of our clients gave me a really good insight. And you remember, I give him a shout out, Drew. Remember Drew, the guy that you spoke to, Katie, and you called me or Fern and you were like, hey, this guy wants to sign up. Yeah. So this guy was interested in Affiliate U. He's in Chicago. Be Strong is the name of his box. And he's like, I'm in. And then he didn't sign up. And I text him and I'm like, hey, what's going on? He's like, I always take 24 hours before
Smart.
making. Yeah. I don't know if he has a threshold for what a big purchase is, but Affiliate U is a substantial price and, purchase, and box owners should do the same. So here's an example, and I love my box here, but we always run out of rings. We always run out of rings on ring road. Ring rows are programmed, and whenever they're programmed, we run out, or even a pull-up day, because a lot of people scale. There's like 6 sets of rings. And I said to the owner, I was like, hey, I didn't even say, can we buy more rings? I was like, hey, we have 6 sets of high rings that I've never seen anyone use.
Yeah, pull them down.
Right. But instead, he bought more rings. And I said, this is a great example of like box owners can be smarter with they were cheap. I get it. But we still have 6 sets of high rings that are going unused.
But long term, is that now a good investment because they're cheap? I'm going to have to buy nicer ones later.
Right.
Right.
So taking up space that now we have rings high.
Right, but the better option would have been like, have I ever had 6 people in the high rings at one time? If the answer is no, you should take those down and repurpose them as low rings.
Yeah, leave one set up. I mean,
2.
First of all, I don't think we've programmed ring muscle ups since I've been at the box going on a year now. Secondly, even if we did program ring muscle ups, there's never going to be a class that has more than 2 people doing them.
Well, this is just if we zoom out just a little bit and say, okay, there's a problem, right? We've presented said problem, which is a shortage of equipment. Well, number one, you can work around that. It's not like you can't change the programming. in order to accommodate that. So it's like, okay, we do it, rewrite the programming, meaning I don't mean take that piece of equipment out, make it an EMOM, alternating. You typically have 12 people in the class. I've got 6 bikes, pretty easy solution, alternating EMOM, assault bike, power clean, done. Simple solution. And the reason I'm saying that is figure out other ways to solve that problem rather than continuing to put that money in there, because it's not solving the problem. The problem is manpower, right? The problem is if I want to do something and I want to build a great business, great businesses are predicated on great teams. If you build a great team first, then I can therefore build a great business. Great. So I've done it backwards and I've done it the other way. And I will tell you unequivocally that the better option is hiring good people.
Yeah. And, going back to us in this moment, best hour of their day, people think, oh, you guys are crushing it and you're wildly successful and that's why you're bringing somebody else on.
I don't know that anybody's saying that. Do you just say that because you want to make yourself feel better about that?
I get at least 1 to 2 texts a year where they're like, man,
year, right? Yeah.
You are the epitome of success. No, but we've done okay. But I will tell you, you and I had many conversations before bringing Katie on full time of just hey, is this the right time? And the truth of the matter is, no, it's not the right time. We're doing it early, but that's what you should be doing. You need to be taking some risk. I wouldn't say it's so early that we're worried we're not going to be able to pay Katie, but it's more okay, we're taking this risk and we know there's more risk in not bringing somebody on than there is in bringing somebody on.
And the fear is always okay, well, it's a scarcity mindset, meaning because everybody looks at on the hire is the money. Oh, we're going to play this. We're going to have to pay this person said number of dollars instead of looking at the positive of it. Again, I literally just did this with another gym where they hired a coach and I'm like, hey, just real quick, how much time did you get back in the week? And they were like, about 30 hours. And I was like, seems legit. 30 hours of your week back between the two of you collectively. Now the challenge becomes, now where do I repurpose that time? Because the answer is not just be absentee owner, check out and do it. That will fall apart for you. Now it's repurpose my time on equally or more important things and basically just double the output, right? All looked at through the lens of doing things really well, right? So this is not to suggest be haphazard and just do a bunch of random stuff and be busy. No, it's no, focus on doing things really, really, really well. Meaning okay, well, if you are not coaching on the floor anymore, well, I could repurpose my time in 2 places. I could redesign my onboarding process and do coach development with those roughly 30 hours that I was coaching on the floor. I'll do 15 to, do coach evals a month, right? Which is 15 more than virtually every other gym out there is doing, and then redesign our onboarding process so that it really checks the boxes for what would then be a good experience for athletes coming in, which is now a really big piece of their whole retention tool that is long-term. So you can just focus on things that are more important or fix things that you have been wanting to fix for a really long time that are causing you pain points. Or streamlining things, figuring out what we should keep doing and what we should get rid of. But I'm just always, putting out fires every day and running from one task to the next and doing all that stuff because there is no free time. So that is where I think people should do that. And I think it's anybody who's opening a box or running a business, that should be the number one priority is put the systems in place, design what I want to deliver a first-class experience, and then who's the next kick-ass team member that I'm going to bring on? Right. And you will probably end up at some point hiring somebody that you will fire. It happens. Right. Very candidly,
discuss that about you. We're playing.
Right. So no, but we were talking about this earlier. We're just man, sometimes it's so refreshing to think, and this is, giving Katie a pat on the back. She's like, man, I think we hit the nail on the head the first time, which is kind of rare. To get somebody who comes in, picks up on it, is, what we would call fire and forget, requires very little direction, understands what the goal is, and then just gets to work, So I think that is, but that doesn't happen all the time, and it's okay because I can just cycle through and go to the next person, if it doesn't work out. So.
And part of that, Go ahead.
Yeah, so you guys are being very kind and like boosting me up and talking about team members. But I think too, it comes a lot from the type of leadership that you put out there. I mean, you both have your experience with affiliate ownership, and I know we're specifically talking with regards to that. And I mean, the mistakes that you've made, the experiences that you've garnered, that has what has been led you to be the leaders that you are today. And so if I am a good addition to the team, it's because of you guys, because of how you've led me to grow in these last 6 months to be worthy of joining full time. So,
well, we appreciate it, but it works both ways, right? And that's kind of what I wanted to ask. I think too many box owners, once they say, okay, I'm going to pay this person, and this goes for anything, whether it's a box owner, an entrepreneurial venture like this, or even a nanny, you're like, okay, I'm paying this person. And then the expectations and entitlement starts to jump up exponentially. Like, I'm paying you. And we forget, and something you've always been really good at, Fern, and you preach to our clients is, you need to pay people for their time. And I think there's a disconnect with box owners when they have a part-time coach, whether that part-time coach is working for their membership or, getting paid $15 or $20 per class, understanding you're paying them for this hour/hour and 15. And most people don't look at it. They look at it like an hour. We all know one class is not an hour. It's a minimum an hour and 5, an hour and 10. So paying people accordingly, but then also having the appropriate expectations. You can't, just because you're paying somebody for, Tuesdays 4 and 5 o'clock class, doesn't mean they're expected to show up Saturdays early for the party, or, to take out the garbage, or, to work one-on-one with nutrition clients. The point is, when you're paying someone, understanding what you're paying them for, and then setting the appropriate expectations for both you and that person.
This is something I made this mistake for quite literally probably half a decade. And as a leader, as an owner, having the unrealistic expectation that a part-timer should take full-time responsibility. And that is a lose-lose scenario. It is a sign of immaturity, which you have immaturity at all evolutions of your development, your growth, but it's a sign of immaturity from a owner and leader standpoint to not recognize that I'm not paying this person to take a workload that would be appropriate for a full-timer. What I'm paying them is to do part-time work. That is the expectation that I have for their output. Now, if they go above and beyond, then I think you should find other ways to take care of them, whether it's like buy them dinner or, give them a gift or give them a day off, just walk in and be like, hey, I got your 9 a.m. class, bro. Like, go ahead and work out. I'll coach it. Do something. But the point is, we really need to taper that. And in tapering that, the follow-on conversation be like, how do I get a full-timer so then I can set full-time expectation, and make sure that you really bring in somebody who is fired up about doing work and is a pipe hitter and just ready to roll. That is how you level up your business. It's not assault bikes. It's not more space, right? Because your bigger space is not going to help just you run more classes. Like, it's just more people, more issues. It's way harder. Your skill level is probably not up to snuff to coach 25 athletes. You would probably be better off just like finding an awesome coach, and adding 3 to 4 classes to the schedule, filling that out. And then eventually at that point, when you have, 10 classes, running 15 to 20 people a day, probably time to look for some new space. But at this point, the manpower is already built into that. I probably have the revenue at this point to really move to a different space, probably pay for the build out with capital on hand and not stress out about it. That is what we should be doing. But everybody is like got all of their eggs in this. Like, we need more equipment, and we need sandbags, and we need a worm, and we need more sleds, and we need ski ergs, and we need all this bullshit. No, you need another good coach. And maybe 2. And maybe that it may not even be another good coach. In most instances, I would even go so far as to say, like, you stay on the floor as much as you can, which means I may need to look very hard at finding a VA to do all the stupid admin stuff that I hate to do. And quite frankly, I'm not very good at. So I can pay somebody not full-time because they're crazy efficient with their time behind a computer on a keyboard with spreadsheets to do that kind of stuff. and they can do what would take me 4 hours and 25 minutes, that solves my problem. And now I can focus on the floor. These other things are getting done. And then as I move off of the floor, I can move over to something that is a little bit more, relevant to the growth of the business, which might be sales.
Yeah, if you're a box owner, you don't have a virtual assistant. You're spending a lot of unnecessary time doing things.
Well, it's not right for everybody, but it's definitely a conversation to be had, right? Which is like, I'm overwhelmed, and it's like, cool. What are you overwhelmed with? I'm overwhelmed with these things. Well, that doesn't always mean a coach. That could mean, okay, well, those are very specific tasks that I would maybe be able to hand off to a virtual assistant. Maybe not. I don't know. It's a conversation, but it should be looked at more often by box owners, because this is how I can, in my opinion, that is kind of like the bridge. It's the bridge to a full-time employee. First thing I have to do is like get rid of these kind of like seemingly menial tasks that are taking up a ton of my time and mental space. And then what that'll allow me to do is like continue to give a kick-ass experience on the floor, make sure I design my referral programs and all the stuff that we would teach that would lend itself to growth, which then lends itself to capital on hand to hire somebody full-time.
Yeah, something we preach all the time to our clients is eliminate, automate, delegate. And I think too many box owners are afraid of doing any of those three things, but more so when they hear that eliminate, automate, delegate, they immediately hear delegate. And that's a part of what you're saying, which yes, you need to delegate. But before delegating, I would encourage you to look at what can be automated, i.e. no one has to do it. And that might look like some sort of syncing of widgets behind the scene to Wodify to your computer, to whatever that is. But even prior to automating, what can actually be eliminated? What are you doing every day that doesn't need to be done? So for example, we used to, this is way back when, post every picture we took to the website or do a multiple blog posts per day. And I think there was some value in there, but certainly many of those things could have been eliminated. And then definitely, as technology improved, I mean, you and I were both open for pre, social media, pre-Instagram. So the blog was where you spread the love and grew your community online. We even had a forum on our site. But now that there's social media, it's like, okay, how can I automate this? Well, I take one picture a day, I upload it to a file, and one of our coaches, gets delegated that task. There's plenty you should do, but I would encourage box owners, if they've not already done this, sit down, write out every single thing you do. And that looks like, I clean the toilets, I take the garbage out, I coach these classes, I write the program, anything you do, and put an E, an A, or a D next to it. But if there's a D next to it, you need to be certain that it's not capable of being automated, or more so, should it actually be eliminated?
And this always helps, and I've gone through this with different people, just to have an outside set of eyes look at it, because I might be delegating the wrong things. I might be delegating things that I'm good at, right? Or I might be delegating something that might be, for instance, client facing, that might not be the best task for a VA to do. And I might need something that, nobody sees behind those scenes, but like gets done on a daily basis, So, and it's a conversation, and one of the interesting things that I'll do with some gyms is say, hey, give me your total payroll for all the coaches that you pay. And they got like 12 coaches on the payroll. And I'm like, and all they're looking at is individually what they're paying each one of them, right? $300, $400, $250, $150, $275. And I'm like, cool. Add all of that up. What does it look like? And they're like, looks like anywhere between $3,000 to $4,000. And I'm like, you could hire somebody full-time for $35,000, $36,000, $45,000 a year. Somebody will take that. At the bare minimum, they'll take 75% of it and be able to provide better value, because now you have a professional on the floor whose job is to coach CrossFit, not somebody who's just doing it on the side, which is the point of this whole conversation, which is we really need to taper the expectation from coaches on like what people have a threshold for doing if they're part-time, and saying, well, my coaches should just really, they should just really want to do it. I'm like, that's bullshit, man. Very few people fall in that bucket where they're just going to crush themselves part-time at night, writing lesson plans, doing all this other stuff, when they have a full-time, 9 to 5 and 2 kids and are just like doing this out of leisure. right? You have to make that leap at some point to build a team where it's not just you and a bunch of part-timers. That is not a business. It's not. Like you are actually the sole person. You're just unaware of it at that point.
Yeah, I know for me, I tricked myself into thinking I've got all these employees, I'm running this great thing. And it was like, I had 20 part-timers, most of which were interns, getting paid nothing. And then I would just have a tremendous amount of frustration when I actually needed help or needed something. You'd always have one or two that would stick around. And ultimately, those became my full-time. I mean, I remember Murph, the guy that lost all that weight and was working for me, he and this guy, James, they would just continue to show up. And James ultimately became, a partner of mine. He co-authored my nutrition book. And I just remember thinking, like, why are you here? Like, he went to college like 3 hours away. He's like, I don't know, I just like helping out. And I'm like, you're the kind of guy I want. And ultimately, I hired him out of college and he became a full-time coach. And he's still, he's in his 30s now. He's an adult. So, it's an easy, I would say it's almost like, Coach Classman has that, like the novice coach.
Mm-hmm.
I would say there's the novice entrepreneur. And a novice entrepreneur,
which most of us spend way too much time there.
If not forever.
Yeah.
Most box owners never leave that. But the novice entrepreneur doesn't respect other people's time. They don't value it. They don't pay them for their time. And they're always frustrated because their unwillingness to pay people eventually just becomes half-assed workers that ultimately get frustrated as well. And now, we've talked about this before on a recent episode. Those workers need to take some onus as well and tell the box owner, hey, I deserve to get paid more, or this and that. And we never really heard that from Katie, I don't think, because we were always on top of it. We were always like, hey, if you're doing work for us, even if it's beyond the scope of what we first discussed, let's make sure you're getting paid for it. So
what I was going to say is, like more tangibly, right? And the big thing here is most gyms are just owner operator. That's it. There is nobody else that is that earns a living outside of like the owner. And going back to the previous podcast we did, that needs to change. Now, here's how you change it, right? So here's the goods. Number one, I have to acknowledge that if I want to grow, because if you add the right team member, the trajectory starts to make a very steep climb very quick, because I've just multiplied my ability to do things, right? I've got more people, everybody's fresh, everybody's fired up, the mood is better, my output is double, all that kind of stuff. So, because most gym owners will be like, I can't pay somebody full-time. Cool. We are aware, like that's where you're at. What I need to do is figure out, what would I need to pay this person, right? What would the gym need to gross in order to pay this person X number of dollars, right? And it doesn't need to be 50, 60 out of the gate. Like, be realistic with yourself, meaning like, well, with somebody who's not working currently, is either a stay-at-home parent or something like that, or is like a college kid who's just kind of like, diddling around doing nothing.
But wants to get their foot in the door.
And is willing to make some sacrifices, right? So let's just call it $3,000 a month. Okay. $3,000 a month. Cool. So that's the number I need to hit. So what number do I need to get to? Let's just call it an $3,000 increase in revenue. So I go from $10,000 a month to $13,000 a month. And then I have to figure out, okay, well, cool. How do I do that? What does that equate to? Well, average membership is average client value is about $150, 20 people. How do I get to 20 people? How long is it going to take me to get there? Well, if I'm going to do my net 3, let's be a little aggressive. Let's go net 4 a month. In 5 months, I've produced the revenue to pay this person full-time, $3,000 a month.
Yeah.
But what I've done is I've taken this, really big, hairy monster of hire a full-time employee, and I've condensed it down to net 4. I need net 4. And in 5 months, I will be able to hire a full-time. And we'll talk later about like how you shouldn't do that, because there's a ton of mistakes people do there. But that reverse engineer it, because if I just said, hey, net 4, or like what we always preach is net 3, so call it 6 months now, and we're still there, net 3, that's not overwhelming for somebody. It also gives me intention as a business owner. Now I'm intentionally growing the gym to give somebody else opportunity that will provide a better experience for my clients and overall make everybody happier. With net 3, 6 months, right? That is how you come up with that plan. Now, there's a lot of things I got to put in place for that. Do I have all of the necessary tools to facilitate that? Yes or no? If you're just randomly waiting for people to walk in the door, that's probably not a plan, but it might happen. In most numbers that I see, they're getting at least 3 people walking in the door every month. So you could back your way into that kind of ignorantly. It could happen, but I would want to be intentional about it. So that's what I'm going to be looking at. So that is how you start to solve this problem, is like, what would be reasonable? What does that look like? What's the gap? And then how do I get to the gap? How long is it going to take me based on a very reasonable goal? And it usually looks like net 3 or 4. Within 4 to 6 months, you'll be able to do that.
Man, so much information in this week's episode. Katie.
All thanks to young Katie.
All thanks to you, Katie. So
yeah, I can go with all of those. All the information was written by me beforehand, so you guys are welcome.
We're just reading your notes. But
yeah,
I love it. I think 2 major things to take away. I love that, Fern. Like, you should be planning for that hire, and part of that needs to be the eliminate, automate, delegate thought process. Homework, if you're listening, and I would say it doesn't matter if you're a box owner or a coach or you have a real job, you should be assessing this in your everyday life. I do this all the time for my personal stuff, and have a lot of things in my life, that I've automated. Like, I'll give you a simple example is like Amazon. I subscribe and save. There's so many things. I think about, okay, my vitamins, how obviously there's 30 in a box and I take 1 a day. So every 30 days, those little things, it's just, you hear some of the geniuses of the world, like the Zuckerbergs and the Steve Jobs, before he passed. They always wear the same shirt. They always eat the same breakfast. And what they're really doing is automating those things. They're eliminating thinking.
I do that for all the lights in our house. So all the lights are based on my morning routine. So I never have to go turn lights on and off anymore. Like, they all just kick on and they start to ramp up over time, so that when I get up out of bed at 5:15, and by the time I walk over to get coffee, the lights are at like 30%. So I'm not blinded by this bright light. The office lights are up. So by the time I walk in there, I don't have to turn on any lights. And then they all kick off or on whenever I'm supposed to, because I was walking around flipping lights on all the time and worried about the damn electricity bill.
Katie, you know what I just took from that? Fern is trying to humble brag that he gets up at 5:15.
I heard that too.
That's great for you, Fern. We get it.
The first alarm goes off at 5:15. 1 hour later, after me punching the alarm clock, then I eventually get out of bed.
Do you snooze?
No, not anymore. I used to be the world's greatest snoozer.
I'm snoozing. That was something at a young age. I was like, this is lazy. And I've never, ever snoozed. And I used to, when I would have like sleepovers at a friend's house, or luckily I've never dated anyone that snoozed, but it's like, just set the alarm for the time you want to get up. Like, stop doing this. If you're going to snooze it 4 times, just set your alarm for 30 minutes later. And I've always kept the alarm on the far side of the room. Now, of course, I don't have one because I've got a 3-month-old. That's my alarm. Well, anyway, great information. And like I was saying, everyone listening to this, challenge for you, this is going on Monday. Give yourself a week and think, have a notebook open for every task you do for this week. Because some days, Tuesdays is garbage night, Thursdays is, date night, whatever it is. Write down everything you do, and then think about what can be eliminated, automated, and delegated. And you're going to have a more successful week, and you're going to be just more prosperous and productive. I'm ending it right there.
It's too late. You can't end it when you say you're going to end it. You just have to end it.
So you never miss an episode of the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel and on all major podcasting platforms at Best Hour of Their Day. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being a part of the best hour of our day. See you next time.